Boyfriend, Teenage Love. Written by Vella Jamar. Narrated by Deja, Nance. Chapter 18. Marcus called from his mother's house and said, "Come here now, baby." Before I could, Roland, whom I'd met at the New Year's Eve party, dropped by unannounced. We sat in the car with Trina and Judy and ended up talking for a couple of hours. My little brother came to the car a few times saying Marcus was on the phone. I kept telling him to tell Marcus I'd be there soon. It was dawn when we all got out of the car. I hadn't forgotten Marcus, just got sidetracked. I told Roland goodbye, but he hugged me and asked if he could borrow $5. I didn't have any change and walked with him around several blocks to his friend's house to get some change. After I loaned it to him, I quickly ran to see if Marcus was still waiting for me. He was sitting as if he had been all along. After he made love to me, he immediately asked, "Who was that nigger you were all hugged up with?" I was shocked and didn't know what to say. I had no idea he had seen us. "Just a friend," I quickly responded. I tried to explain that I had just walked around there to loan him some money. No matter how much I tried explaining, he had already gone inside of me and changed the paternity of our child. He demanded, "Put that baby in his, not my last name," and screamed, "Goodbye." He sat in the chair looking as if I had stabbed him in the heart. I couldn't do anything but leave as he excused me with such abruptness. He was mad and I was even more confused as to what I was going to do. He was obviously feeling betrayed as he had made me feel so many times since we began seeing each other. He always had a solid explanation the numerous times I heard he'd been with this girl or that one. When I first arrived, he was sitting down. Unbeknownst to me, at the time, he had followed us as we walked to Roland's friend's house and saw his arm around my waist. He zoomed back literally seconds before I walked in and knew I was not in there long enough to have had sex with him that short amount of time. Dirty dog. He always made sure he got him some fun before he declared we were finished with the relationship. I left. It was useless trying to convince him that we had not slept together. He reiterated, "Be sure to put that baby in his last name." His words were piercing. His denial at the very start of the pregnancy was the last thing I needed. I walked home alone with a very heavy heart. About a week after Marcus demanded giving the baby a last name other than his own, he came over and added that I'd better be careful because word was out that Samantha was going to kick my ass. He said it and was gone. Marcus knew it was his child even if he was feeling betrayed at the moment. I still had high school to complete and decided to allow my mind to focus on graduation. The main pressure cooker was my American government class. I spent weeks memorizing for the final test. I never had to study for my French class. That course was a breeze. As a special bonus for being a part of the French club, we rode the BART train to San Francisco and dined at a French restaurant in a fancy hotel. I was already starting to feel nauseated at certain smells and knew I'd better play it safe. I was also starting to feel a little uncomfortable in certain pants. Everyone ordered to their heart's desire. Everyone, that is, except me. I did brave a shrimp cocktail, but that was as courageous as I got. I ran to the bathroom a few times when I felt as though I was going to throw up. Fortunately, I didn't. I sat back down and ordered a simple Salisbury steak and prayed to God for it to stay down. They ordered worms and other fancy things we had never eaten or heard of. No one really noticed how plain I was being as they devoured their meals. I made it out alive and rushed home to relax from the long day. We still had a few fun events to go to as seniors, which included the senior picnic, Disneyland, and a Great America trip. The day of the picnic, I wore some comfortable shorts so my baby could breathe. No one was ever told where the picnic was, but it was rumored that it was held every year at the same place. It seemed like it took forever to get there as we enjoyed the noisy long bus trip. When we arrived, we had mounds of fun. We swam, played ping pong, baseball, took lots of pictures, and danced to the music. Someone brought a yearbook from Downer Junior High. We had an absolute blast looking at how different we looked 5 years prior. We laughed each time someone in the crowd was spotted in the book. I quickly grabbed it and searched for Marcus's picture. He was sporting a blowout natural, and I would have gazed at it all day had Diana not forcefully turned the page declaring, "Okay, you've stared at the boy long enough." It was really amazing to see how much we'd grown. We really got a good laugh looking at William, who I had a mild crush on during my junior year. He He was nowhere near as cute as he now was. Back then, he was chunky with big, thick glasses on his fat face and was a definite twin likeness of Fat Albert. We were having so much fun as we ate to our heart's delight. It was sad getting near the end of our last days of high school together. It once seemed the day would never get here. Now we were near graduation. Our lives were getting ready to change as we were about to journey into adulthood. Some of us a lot sooner than others. I found out later that there were at least 4 other girls pregnant at the time, and we all delivered around December and January. The day ended much too soon. As we were getting off of the bus, the faculty member who had chaperoned us to the picnic was scouring the top of the bus where the luggage normally goes. I thought I would help him out, though I didn't know what we were scouring for. It had been rumored for years that he liked strong drink. I was ahead of him and felt a bottle of vodka, which I picked up and he quickly grabbed. It must have been true, the rumor and all. That bottle didn't just happen up there. I did not go to Disneyland with baby growing inside of me. I was not going to take that brave chance. A few weeks later, we enjoyed a trip to Great America as another bonus for being seniors. We spent the entire day trying to win prizes. I rode on a few lightweight rides. Olita and Raymond were there along with Marcus's sister Rachel, who used to eat all of the food for Marcus. She had driven them in her blue Volkswagen. Olita later told me that Raymond stole a lot of stuffed animals just for her when he did not win them. The day ended with a flat tire and what seemed like hours to fix it before we were finally on our way back home on the big yellow bus. Senior ball was approaching and everyone was happily planning their outfit with their dates. Diana was especially content. She was going with her new love. Marcus promised he'd take me. I knew he wasn't taking me anywhere after our recent parting. I seamed together a lime green dress for Diana and a light blue dress for me, just in case. Maybe I'd get the nerves to go by myself. I asked Alvin to take me and he said he would get some elevator shoes. He was very short, so we could at least be the same height. He said another girl from my school had also asked him to take her. He was jiving. He would have gladly taken me had I offered to pay for everything as Pam had with Marcus. One evening while I was at home, I noticed my little sister's boyfriend in the room she shared with 2 other siblings. My youngest brother's room was inside of theirs, and they literally kicked him out when they got ready to do the do, according to my youngest sister. My mind drifted back to that ass whooping I received when Marcus was caught in my room the previous summer. I went downstairs to inquire of my mother. Why did her boyfriend get to come up there and screw her after they kicked my little brother out of his room when I got beat when Marcus got caught in my room? My mother was in bed and jumped up as arguing between my sister, whose boyfriend stood there, and I ensued. My brother, whom I hated, and who hated me, back jumped in and wrestled me to the floor, trying to break my arm off as he twisted it behind my back. My mother just leaned in her doorway with her hands resting on her chin. After several minutes, she pulled him off and looked me straight in the eye and said, "Now do you see any difference between this and what you did to him a couple of years ago?" It was as if she got personal satisfaction in him trying to break my arm as she stood and watched. A couple of years earlier, he was aggravating my younger sister, both physically and verbally. Without thinking, I grabbed a fireplace tool, ran upstairs, and we fought. He grabbed a golf club, and we hit back and forth. My Aunt Jerry would later tell me how extremely disappointed she was at the sight of him bleeding. She let me know how very sad, in fact, she was that it had got to that point. She was the kind of aunt that you never wanted to let down or to be disappointed in you. That didn't change the hostility that I had to live with in that house. It simply didn't matter if it was the oldest daughters, the brother whom I intensely hated, or any of the 4 youngest who I got along a little better with most of the time. I was always wrong, even when it was obvious I was not wrong, no matter what. For the most part, it was a living hell growing up in that house, especially during my teen years, which is why I enjoyed being gone as much as possible. The ultimate betrayal would be the allowance of my sister's rapist boyfriend to re-enter our home after the fact that he had raped me and had told her that he did so. I felt many times like I had been raped many times over again. I was made to feel like I simply didn't matter, let alone my feelings. I vowed that no one who hurt any child of mine would be allowed in our home to hurt them again. It's just common sense. That was my opinion anyway. After I got up, I ran out of the house. Marcus must have been lurking. As soon as I stepped off the porch, He snatched his hat off of my head before he noticed me crying. When he did, he embraced me and walked us around the corner. He said to hold on while he stole his mother's house to grab a bite to eat. We then journeyed the long trip to North Richmond on foot. Unfortunately, he was not driving. I didn't discuss the fracas. He put his arm around my shoulder as we walked and went into his singing routine, telling me through song how he regrets having left home early. He sung how I needed to go home and fix the problems. I walked in silence as we continued. When we reached his grandmother's house, he crept in and took the keys. There was very little gas and neither of us had a dime. He grabbed a piece of hose and a gas can and drove to the projects in the deeper part of North. Before he left, he said, "Whatever you do not open this car door for anyone and do not leave." I locked both doors and sank deep in thought. I didn't realize the seriousness of his command at the time. I had heard a few bad things happening in that part of town, but hadn't deemed them any worse than bad things occurring in any other part of town. He was a bold young man to be stealing people's gas out of their car in any part of town, but especially out there. He was my baby again, I assumed. It seemed like he was gone for eternity. I was relieved when he returned. He was bold and put the gas in right there. We drove off and parked back in front of his grandmother's house. She had awakened since we had left and noticed both the key and the car missing. Upon seeing the car, she came outside and said, "Now, Marcus, I told you not to drive that car." Very calmly. She wasn't mad, more relieved if anything that the car was back. He said, "Oh, Big Alma, I'm sorry," and handed her the keys. She went back inside and went to bed in peace with the keys safely in her possession. We basically fought all night trying to keep our eyes open. We slept in an upright, uncomfortable position. When she came outside in the morning to go to work, she said, "Marcus, I don't like this. It doesn't look good to the neighbors." He apologized and said it won't happen again. As soon as she left, we went inside. I washed my face and checked out the bus schedule. When it was near time for it to arrive, Marcus walked me to the bus stop and I left. I still had to finish school. I caught the bus to that dreary house, got dressed, and left. It was almost time to receive my high school diploma. I was in deep thought about me and the crumb snatcher that was growing inside. It was my secret, which I was able to keep until 4.5 months when I really started showing. I didn't know whether to attend college as planned in the fall or put it off for a year. Marcus knew I was pregnant for real this time. He was still coming here and there, but the decision as how I was going to proceed solely rested on my shoulder. The final edition of the Harriel's newspaper was dedicated to Senior Wills. I felt a little bad for having cut Pam's picture out of the photo of her and Marcus at the ball, making sure she saw it. I took the opportunity to apologize and willed to her both halves because I really probably shouldn't have. I then willed to Marcus keys to my future apartment, not fully realizing what I was setting myself up for. Smile, baby. I further willed to my nice biology teacher, Mr. Selak, who I learned so much from, a sincere apology for acting so childish on back-to-school night a year earlier, when Diana and I jumped on the hood of his car trying to make him stay against his wishes. I willed to Diana and her new love, joy, and happiness in future years. I willed many good times ahead to Alita and Raymond. I willed a better bus to the upcoming seniors on their trip to Great America, hoping all the tires would get them safely there and back. I willed my locker in the senior hall to Judy for her remaining year to keep all of her books in. I also willed to Trina and Gang a $5 bag of herbs they liked putting their money together to purchase, and some of the good times they used to have with each other. They didn't hang as much as they once had. Someone thought my last will was inappropriate and left it out completely. I didn't see a thing wrong with it. Not long after Senior Wills was published, Pam was walking in the hallway with Marcus, his half-sister, a product of his dad's extramarital affair, and boldly stated, Tandy, you supposed to be going with Marcus?" I asked why. She went on, "If you are supposed to be going with him, why was he over at my house the other night?" I responded, "If you are supposed to be going with him, why was he over my house last night?" She asked as if shocked, "He was over your house last night?" I said yes, slammed my locker, and walked back to class. She mumbled under her breath to his illegal sister, "Huh, she's not going to get him," as they both giggled. I went back to class and told Diana what she'd said. I don't know what influence she thought his illegal sister would have over him. I wasn't the least bit concerned about her trying to go to her to get close, thinking it would get her closer to Marcus. He surely wasn't going to be influenced by anyone's decision other than his own when it came to running his love life. I would come to learn. Once that boy made up his mind as to what he was going to do with whom he was going to do it with, that was it. He was the only one going to alter his decision. Marcus came over later that evening and walked us to his house around the corner where we sat in a car that was sitting in his mom's driveway. He was getting a little too bold for his britches as far as I was concerned. His mother was in the house and could have walked out at any moment. We kissed and hugged in between talking. I did not feel comfortable being that close to where she could have seen us. Even though it had been months since she caught us at his grandmother's house, I did not want her to see me. We didn't stay long. I had school the next day. While chatting, his sister walked by on her way in the house and looked like she had slimmed down quite a bit. They said her new boyfriend had whacked off her hair. She was sporting a real short natural. Raymond walked in next. Marcus no longer had to worry about school, but I still had to finish and told him I needed to get home. We got out of the car and he walked me back around the corner. The next day at school, Raymond came up to me as I was closing my locker and said, "What were you and Marcus doing in the car last night?" "Nothing," I told his nosy ass and walked to class. It was pretty dark. I wonder how he knew it was me. Maybe Marcus and I weren't as slick as we had always thought we were. The end of the year was upon us. It took me back to when I was in the 6th grade. The final days were heartbreaking when I realized I wouldn't see all of the friends I'd come to fully enjoy during the school year, especially my friend Terry, who was in the 5th grade that year while I was in the 6th. It was heart-wrenching as the days, which seemed to go by quicker than normal, wrapped up. We had enjoyed so many good times during the year, I wanted it to last forever. I remembered savoring each day the last month of school, wishing it would never end. Here I was in my life facing final countdown again as we were nearing the end of another beautiful era. We had ups and we had downs over the past 4 years. Overall, most of it was an experience I wouldn't have traded for the world. As we concluded the final activities, it was time to graduate. Seniors were excused from classes and were instructed to pick up cap and gowns. A lot of us were wrapping up goodbyes to teachers who had become an important part of our lives the past 4 years. I checked with my historical-looking government teacher to make sure I was going to receive a passing grade. He affirmed. When he asked, was I going to march, I too affirmed. As I walked home with my cap and gown, I saw Don about a block away from my house. I had gone to school with him for the last 5 years, but had missed him the last few weeks. I asked what happened, and he said that he found a job and had dropped out of school to work it. How sad I thought to get that close to your diploma and quit the last leg of the way. He said he was going to go back and finish, and that he would be at the ceremony. We bid each other goodbye and said we'd see each other later on at graduation. As I journeyed home to get ready for graduation, excitement was in the air despite the earlier chaos. My relatives from Fresno, including and especially my Aunt Jerry and Essie, were there to cheer me on. I was the first out of my maternal grandmother's grandchildren and the first in my family to receive my diploma. Aunt Jerry had asked me for the last 13 or so years what was I going to be when I grew up. She knew time would get here a lot quicker than I could possibly imagine. She wanted us to be prepared like all other nationalities prep their young from birth to the PhD, MA, BA, or AA degrees. She was not afforded a lot of opportunities as a child and made it her life mission to make sure we got things in life that she wasn't able to have. It was because of her that we took swimming, piano, and skating lessons over the years. It was in large part because of her and all of the positive input and encouragement over the years that I was even about to receive my diploma. She was always encouraging us to get out there and try different things in our lives. Good things, of course. She and the rest of the Fresno gang had traveled 3 long hours just to see me walk. I was happy they loved me enough to support me in a very important event and happy that I made it to the finish line. I gave Alvin a ticket to my graduation. He said he didn't believe I was going to receive my diploma even if he saw it with his own 2 eyes. He said he wouldn't miss it for the world. He was very sarcastic when he found out that I graduated with only 2 extra credits beyond what was necessary. I didn't see the logic. As long as I met the required amount, what difference did it make? As we gathered in the hallways and found our alphabetical place in line, the room filled with love and excitement. We were anxious graduates who shared the last 4 years of our lives together. Some for the last 6 meeting up in junior high, and some for 13 years having started kindergarten together. We stood chatting among each other while standing in line waiting for the cue to move toward our seats. As we entered the auditorium, a big cheer erupted from the crowd as we proudly walked to our seats shining in our purple graduation gowns with matching caps. Someone screamed out loud, "Let the ceremonies begin!" It was a bittersweet moment for all of us. We sat patiently and quietly as the principal and senior class president said their final comments. We then lined the stage row after row and proudly walked up one by one and received our diploma. We had to shake hands with the principal and smile for the photographer, who was on the other side taking an individual picture. I tried not to fall as I nervously walked to receive my diploma in my heels, which I had gotten better at walking in. As the last person received their diploma and came back to join the rest of us, in unison, we, the class of 1980 on the 6th day of June from Harry L's High School, threw our caps in the air and yelled a cheer of excitement. We tried to catch them as they landed on the floor and seats. Just like that, it was over. What we had worked a total of 13 long years for had finally come to an end. A lot of us who had remained friends hugged, happy to be there at that very moment. It was a milestone in all of our lives. It was the end of one journey and the beginning of a new one, for all in whichever route we would take in life. We turned in our cap and gown to a designated teacher so we could actually receive our diplomas. We were only given an empty diploma holder on stage. When I received my diploma, I hugged my French teacher who was nearby. I then hugged all of my friends. Everyone bid each other a good future and then began exchanging information about where the parties were. I received a $20 check from my dear Uncle Stennis and his lovely wife Eloise, and a $10 bill from my Aunt Jerry and my other aunt from Fresno. I tucked them in place and briefly chatted with and thanked them for coming. Diana was there ready to party. It was sad that she hadn't graduated. She had definitely been a part of my life the past 6 years, more intensely the past 2. I was glad she came. I'm sure it couldn't have been easy. Don was there as well, just like he'd promised. He was high-fiving all of his buddies who probably wanted to kick his ass for taking on that job 3 weeks before what should have been a very important moment for him as well. We were outside hugging and promising to stay in touch over the years, as some received flowers from loved ones. As the crowd dissipated, somehow I ended up back at home trying to convince my Aunt Essie to let Diana and I use her car. She just kept on saying, "I'll take you, I'll take you." She dropped us off at one of the many parties that were taking place. Nelson, who was giving that particular one, was a cool dude with a wonderful sense of humor and had made us laugh numerous times over the years. I always liked a person who could find something to laugh about, and he always had plenty of jokes. It didn't matter if we were in the classroom or out. I wanted to stay at his party. It was going well, but Diana wanted to go check out some of the others. Her boyfriend came and was driving, and so I had to go where the wheels were flowing. I was not going to walk anywhere that night. We went to a party on McDonald Avenue being given by Brenda. Diana wanted to go in with me, but her boyfriend remarked, "She ain't going in there." I don't know who in the hell he thought he was making that statement with the millions of parties we had frequented together. We drove to another one. Nikki, who I'd bitten while fighting over a year ago, was given that one, and I didn't feel comfortable going in even though Diana asked if it would be okay. I was disappointed and had them to drop me back off at home. I called Marcus so I could spend the evening with him, but he was gone. Oh well, I decided. Forget everyone and went upstairs and went to bed. Me and my secret I was carrying. After all of the excitement ended, my aunt invited me for a stay in Fresno for the summer. I happily obliged. I needed some thinking space. Luckily, I didn't throw up on the trip down. I thought she was the most creative person in the world. She always went through great pains to fix up her dinner table, even for the simplest of meals. I was in the 4th grade when I first noticed how creative she was, and though I wasn't at the time, said to myself, I'm going to be creative just like her when I grow up. She had a great life, husband, 2 kids, and only had to work part-time so she could ensure the proper raising of her young ones, which she put all of her effort into. It was her and my Aunt Jerry who we used to hang out with during our brief stay in Fresno at the university. They were both great role models. She helped me settle in by making me feel like her home was my home before she went to work, leaving me to babysit. She had the smartest little son. All day he repeated in the most proper tone I'd ever heard someone his age speak. I want my mother. I just want my mother. He must have said 1,000 times. He was sweet and had a sister who had lots of energy and was a year older than him. We did kid things all day. We had fun going in the kitchen choosing from a variety of foods. I was really enjoying myself. It was a house you could kick back in and relax. I was just getting comfortable when my mother called and said I was accepted in a teen summer job program. I traveled the long trip back home. When I arrived, I attended orientation and then went straight to work. I was beginning to feel more nauseated but held on to the job. I needed every penny. I spent a little time with Diana, but between having to work and sleep, this summer was going to be different from all others. One Saturday, Marcus came limping towards me, Trina and Judy as we sat on the ground taking in the warm sun, which we'd loved doing first thing in the morning. He waved at me to come. As I got close, I asked, "Why are you limping?" He said he got hurt while playing football and asked me to go for a ride with him. He wrapped his arm around my waist and walked us toward his grandmother's car, which was parked at the corner. We drove to North and I sat practically under him as he operated the steering wheel. We rode to a secluded area and parked. He was nowhere near hurt as he had claimed just a few moments earlier when he picked me up. His grandmother once told me that after playing football, he would come home and wrap up in bandages, pretending to be hurt more than he actually was, so he could get some tender, loving care right before time to go and visit his girlfriend. She said she would sit back and laugh at him as he'd carefully wrap the bandages around his arm and or leg several times. We began petting heavily. As I looked around, I felt very uncomfortable in that neck of the woods and told him I was ready to go back home. He didn't seem to appreciate it, but did oblige. As soon as we pulled off, a police car with 2 officers and a flashing siren pulled us over. One asked Marcus to follow him to the police car. The other stayed by the window and asked me a few questions. She said someone had called and reported hearing gunshots in the area and they were there to check it out. When they realized we were not the culprits, they let us go on our way. Marcus got back in the car and drove away. I told him to hurry up and get me back to my side of town. When I returned, Trina and Judy were still sitting in the sun. Trina asked, "Where did y'all go?" looking at me with suspicious eyes. She then answered, "Y'all are so nasty, get away from me," waving her hands assuming we had went and done the do. That was his reputation. I ignored her and resumed my place in the sun as we finished talking. A few days later, Marcus called and told me to catch the bus to his house. His grandmother had gone to work and forgot to leave him the car keys. He had to watch Pops and couldn't go anywhere. His grandmother apparently left him with a number of chores, none of which he'd completed before she came home. Pops laughed throughout the course of the day and kept repeating, "There's going to be a big fight when Annie Mae get home." He seemed anxious to see some upcoming action. He must have loved his wife's feistiness. Marcus ran in and out of the house every time someone rang the doorbell. Though I pretty much sat the whole time, I felt as if I were watching Pops. I sat back and caught up on my soap operas. Marcus was known in the neighborhood for his pigeons and went in and out, back and forth with different ones all day long concerning them hot damn birds of his. His ambitions were to become a veterinarian, but he hadn't quite gotten around to it. That was his second year of officially being out of school. Except for some kissing and his sitting in my lap when he was in the house long enough to remember I was there, we didn't do much of anything with or to each other the entire day. I enjoyed being there with him. It was good seeing a non-sexual side of him. He was cuter with his clothes on than off, though he probably wouldn't agree. I was naturally in place when his grandmother came in from work sitting on the couch. As soon as she walked in the door, she began fussing at Marcus after she said hi to me. She was mad that he hadn't done a single chore she told him to do. He didn't say a word as he pulled out the vacuum and tried to catch up on some of the work she had instructed him to complete before she came home. Pops laughed hysterically as he rocked back and forth in his rocking chair, sporting his big cat glasses. Marcus didn't talk back as he tried keeping up with her every command. She fussed out each one at the top of her lungs, and he looked very disappointed that he had let her down. After she got him to work, she focused her attention on Pops. She noticed a stench about him and started fussing at him too. Poor Pops. He didn't think her fussing was so funny anymore as he became the focus point. He didn't breathe a word. When she finished telling him off, she yelled at Marcus, "Now get your ass in there and go clean him." Marcus stopped the vacuum cleaner and boldly stood there and declared, "Man, Big Grandma, what do you want me to do?" I could not hold back from laughing, though I tried. I had never seen a grandmother like her. She was a very funny lady with a couple of colorful words flying out of her mouth at her peak of anger. Marcus noticed me laughing and said in a very firm voice, "You can just go home." I ignored him and kept giggling at his silly self getting fussed at for not doing a single thing she told him to do. After she got both of them in order, she was clearly the boss. She went to the kitchen to start dinner. She fried some chicken and super big French fries. She asked me if I would like some supper. Yes, I replied as I made my way off the couch and was now sitting at the dining room table closer to the action. Marcus slipped out of the bathroom a couple of times for some air with a towel wrapped around his face. He was taking Pops a bath. Granny told him to go back in there and finish. She was not playing. When Marcus finished bathing Pops and got him all dressed back up, his grandmother sat his plate before him and he enjoyed his meal, demolishing every bite. Marcus came in the dining room and told me to go make his plate. I put an apparent insufficient amount of food on. As I handed it to him, he stated, "I am not a bird," and went into the kitchen to pile on more chicken and fries. We all sat down and had a wonderful meal together. I enjoyed every bite. Finally, we did something together besides the hoochie cooch, and I enjoyed every minute being there with him and his grandparents. I wanted to stay all night. Not that his grandmother would have allowed it, but his mother called and said she would be there shortly. That was my cue to leave. I did not want to see her and made some lame excuse to say goodbye. Marcus was puzzled as to why I was leaving after such a lovely day together. When he ran outside after me, I explained to him that I did not want to see his mother after the embarrassment I'd suffered months earlier at the very house when she caught us that morning when his grandmother was out of town. I was still not ready to face her. He said he understood and walked me to the bus stop. I went home and shared my day's event with Trina and Judy, and we laughed all over again. This has been Boyfriend, Teenage Love, written by Vella Jamar, narrated by Deja, Nance.